This is a full story. Puppy wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. My ex-boyfriend moved in right across the hall. On the first day we met, I had just returned from a minor surgery and hadn't washed my hair for 7 days. And he was still the same old handsome guy who could make my heart race. Rockey scanned me up and down, smiling gently yet with a hint of sarcasm. You haven't changed a bit. I hadn't eaten anything decent for 7 days, and it was obvious my face was ashen. When I was hospitalized, I even went in my pajamas for convenience. Fuming, I sneered. Yeah, your dad looks down on you just the same, and still dumps you. Sure enough, Rockey's face darkened, and he pursed his lips, remaining silent as we both entered the elevator. I pressed the button for the 16th floor, and he didn't press any button for a floor. I was both puzzled and irritated, so I kept my mouth shut. When he reached my door, I couldn't help but ask, "What are you following me for?" Rockey opened the fingerprint lock and ignored me completely, not saying a word. I was stunned for a moment, then went back home. The first thing I did was head to the bathroom to take a shower. Yet my heart was still racing. I still liked him, of course. It's just that he was toxic, and my temper was bad and toxic too. We had a huge argument 3 months ago and completely broke up. The doorbell rang. I put on a bathrobe and went to answer it. Rockey, shameless as ever, was standing at the door, disheveled with half-wet hair, trying to seduce me. "What do you want?" I pulled the door open, squinting my eyes in a defensive manner. Inside, I was already drooling. God knows how much I craved him. Rockey tilted his head slightly, looking a bit awkward. "The shower's broken. Can I borrow yours?" "Oh, you've forgotten your last comment." I crossed my arms, mocking him leisurely. Sure enough, his face darkened, and he gave me a disdainful glance before preparing to leave. "Well, it's not that I can't lend it to you." I quickly spoke up to stop him. After all, I still wanted him around. Rockey turned back, signaling me to step aside. I reflexively moved out of the way. "Speak." He seemed to be in my head, knowing I was far from a kind person. "Make me some food." Before I could finish, Rockey turned around and was about to leave, showing no sign of compromise. That dog of a man, back when we were together, used to cook for me every day, and even coaxed me to eat in the morning. "It's just for a week. Just make the food and bring some over. I've just had surgery and eating takeout isn't good for me." I softened my tone, believing he'd give in. "Sick?" "Yeah. Just got out of the hospital. You know I can't cook." "Then starve." Rocky's voice was harsh, but he was already walking towards the bathroom. Watching his tall and fit back, the enticing curve of his waist, I couldn't help but smile triumphantly. The moment he opened the bathroom door, I suddenly remembered my underwear hanging on the door handle. "Don't." But it was too late to stop him. Rockey bent down and picked up my underwear, his long eyelashes half closed. After a long pause, he finally said, "You've become so tacky." I wanted to throw it at his forehead. I ran over in 3 quick steps to snatch it from him. "None of your business. I'm not letting you see it." A casual remark from me could touch his sore spot. "Then who do you want to show it to?" Rocky's face turned icy as if it could drop ice shards. I was so stunned by his words that I suddenly shrank back. It was too dirty in the hospital, so I picked the cheap ones that I planned to throw away. I didn't want you to see them. Seeing me in this post-hospital state had already driven me crazy 1,000 times inside. Hearing my explanation, Rockey chuckled lightly, like spring water spreading, teasing me greatly. When he closed the door, I suddenly realized that this was my ex-boyfriend, who had no right to question me. "That's not right. You've been dumped by me, you dog. Why do you care who I show it to?" I muttered helplessly at the closed bathroom door. Suddenly, the door was pulled open again. Rockey only showed half his body, and my eyes almost fell into his collarbone. "I can hear you." After saying that, he gave a meaningful glance at his waist and then at me. It was a blatant seduction. I wanted to push the door open and get in, instinctively swallowing, and my hand, not under my control, was already pushing the door. "What do you want to do? Speak up." Rockey held the door, smiling more seductively than the mist, alluring and inviting. Blocked by him, my mind cleared up instantly. I withdrew my hand and stood straight. "You didn't bring a towel. Don't use mine. There are new ones in the cabinet under the sink." The door slammed shut, and Rockey didn't even bother to look at me again. Forget it. Even if we were to get back together, I wouldn't be a desperate fool. I was holding my phone, watching a video while heading to the fridge for some mineral water. My nose collided with the kitchen corner wall. I had just had nose surgery, and I instantly felt something was wrong. Touching my face, it was covered in blood. Dizzy at the sight of blood, I collapsed to the floor, my voice trembling with a cry, "Rocky." I never expected him to come out. Rocky came out wrapped in a bath towel, looking a bit anxious. Seeing me on the floor, covered in blood, his already pale face turned even whiter. But I still had the presence of mind to think about something else. Seeing his previously hidden abdomen made my nosebleed seem even more intense. He grabbed some tissue from the dining table and wiped my face. "Close your eyes." I didn't understand but obeyed. Feeling him crouch beside me, I began to regret closing my eyes. Just as I was about to open them, he picked me up horizontally. "Rest on the sofa first. I'll change clothes and take you to the hospital." His voice was soothing and gentle. Rocky changed into fresh clothes and even thoughtfully brought a coat for me. He naturally took my hand and led me downstairs, completely forgetting that we had broken up. Since I needed his help, I certainly wouldn't remind him of our breakup. I might as well take advantage of the situation. His hand is so smooth. At the emergency room, I discovered that today's on-duty doctor was my primary physician, Adela. Dr. Adela. Seeing him lifted my spirits, and my nervous body relaxed a bit. But for some reason, Rocky's grip on my hand seemed to tighten. After the surgery, the night before the removal of the packing had expanded significantly in my nasal cavity. I was extremely uncomfortable, restless, and wandered outside the ward. I happened to run into Adela, who was on duty at that time. On the toughest night, I sat by my primary doctor's side until dawn. "Miss Jiang, what happened?" Adela raised an eyebrow upon seeing me. "My nose hit the wall and is bleeding." Adela nodded and indicated for me to sit in the chair for him to examine me. Every time I sat in that chair, it brought back painful memories, making me feel a bit anxious. Adela held a cotton swab soaked in anesthetic and said gently, "Don't be nervous. I'll be gentle." His eyes were kind and calm, which helped me relax. The swab was inserted deeper into my nasal cavity, and I couldn't help but shrink back a bit. "All done. Wait outside for 10 minutes. I walked out of the emergency room and sat with Rocky on the chairs outside, noticing his unexpectedly low mood. "What's wrong? Do you have that doctor's contact information?" Rocky didn't look at me, speaking lightly as if making conversation for the sake of it. He was probably changing the subject. "Oh, right, I don't have it. I'll try to get it from Dr. Adela later." Upon hearing this, Rocky suddenly turned to look at me, his eyes dark and emotions turbulent. My first reaction was that my nose, stuffed with 2 swabs, might look a bit unattractive. So I instinctively turned my head to give him a side profile. Why aren't you looking at me?" Rocky's voice was a bit hoarse. I inexplicably felt that his next question would be, "Do I look bad?" Thinking this, I couldn't help but sneer. "What's there to look at?" To my surprise, Rocky reached out to pinch my chin to turn my face toward him. It wasn't too late yet, and there were still people coming and going in the hospital. I angrily brushed his hand away, preparing to lecture him about being considerate. When I heard Dr. Adela's voice, "Come in," I didn't argue further and went in for Dr. Adela to examine me. "It's nothing serious. The wound just has a small tear. Take the medication I've prescribed and don't worry." Dr. Adela smiled at me as he finished with the nasal speculum. "Dr. Adela, can I was about to ask Dr. Adela for his WeChat when Rocky appeared at the door. He leaned against the door frame, eyes half closed. "Let's go. You haven't had dinner and need to buy groceries." Dr. Adela glanced at Rocky and agreed. "You should go. You need to eat on time, rest properly, and avoid overexertion." With this distraction, I forgot to ask Dr. Adela for his WeChat and obediently followed Rocky out. I only remembered once we were in the car, leaving the hospital. "Why did you interrupt me from getting Dr. Adela's WeChat? Do you plan on getting sick again?" Rocky said lazily, waiting at the red light. "You can't expect much from a dog's mouth. I'm always cursing me," I muttered quietly. I just wanted to avoid arguing with him, considering he might be soft when eating. But this dog twisted it into me being guilty. "Seems like you really want to get sick again. Should I get Dr. Adela's number for you?" Rocky's words were filled with sarcasm. "Are you crazy?" I scolded, then realized something was wrong and leaned in close to his face. "Oh, are you jealous? That's not acceptable." The light turned green just then, and Rocky stepped on the gas. I ended up leaning on him, giving him a kiss with teeth marks. Rocky looked down at me with a smile. "Embracing and biting, that's not acceptable either." We went into the supermarket to buy groceries. "What do you want to eat?" "Meat. Eat something light." "Then why ask me? Just buy whatever." I gave him a glance. Rocky chuckled lightly and chose a piece of beef. "Teach me how to cook." I watched Rocky select ingredients and felt inexplicably moved. Rocky didn't look up. "Why do you want to learn that?" I was about to make a snide remark when my party-loving friend, Alice, appeared. Haley, didn't you say you were seeing someone new recently? Why is it still him? Seriously, bro, if you don't speak, no one will think you're dumb. Rocky's face visibly darkened. Without saying a word, he discarded the chicken wings he was holding, pulled out the beef from the cart, gave me a glare, and walked off. He's so tall, I didn't react quickly enough and he was already far ahead. I looked back and pointed at Alice in a vengeful manner, indicating I'd deal with her later, then ran up to catch up with Rocky. Hey, eat some meat, I tugged at his sleeve, looking pitifully at him. Rocky raised his arm slightly, easily shaking me off. It's good enough that you have something to eat. He stayed cold-faced, no matter what I said or explained. He remained sarcastic. In the underground parking lot, my sharp tongue couldn't be controlled any longer. I slammed the car door shut. Brother, maybe you should think about whether you have the right to be angry before showing people your attitude. I really didn't want to get back together. You're the one who moved into my place. Why should I comfort you? Don't you think you should deal with your own little emotions? I've even cut in line for you. Why don't you get it? After saying this, I felt a sense of relief, my pent-up anger dissipating. But Rocky's lips were pale, probably extremely furious. How could I not control my mouth? Seeing his expression made me regret so much I could smash my head against the wall. But when anger rises, it's really hard to control yourself. I closed my eyes, preparing to apologize. Rocky spoke first, his voice cold and clear, showing no emotion. I'm quite a fool. No, you're not foolish. It's me who's foolish. If I weren't sick, I would have been a desperate fool for you. Before I could express my loyalty, Rocky transferred 2,000 yuan to me with the note, bath money. Then he got into the car, stepped on the gas, and drove away. The whole process was smooth and seamless, without a hint of hesitation. I was left standing there, only able to smell the exhaust fumes from his car. I really am a useless, incompetent person. I will be crying. I called Rocky 3 times before he finally answered. Who's this? A sweet, girlish voice came through the phone, making me furious. I'm his father, I said angrily, ready to hang up. But then I noticed the loud music in the background. So this guy went to a bar to drown his sorrows? I changed my tone. Where are you guys? The woman seemed confused by my sudden shift in attitude and blurted out the name of the bar. I quickly went home, did a fast makeover, changed into my battle gear, and headed to Total. As soon as I walked in, I saw Rocky sitting on the sofa, holding a glass of wine. He didn't look like he was so drunk he couldn't manage a phone call. The sweet-talking woman next to him was dressed provocatively in a low-cut top, smiling at him. I marched over in my high heels, full of determination. Do you still recognize me? I snatched the wine glass from Rocky's hand. He glanced up and said, neighbor from across the hall. That really made me laugh. The woman next to him also burst into laughter. What's so funny? He's my boyfriend, can't you see? We had a fight, so why don't you go somewhere else and stay out of this? I glared at the annoying woman, fuming. Don't be like that, sister. Your phone number doesn't even have a note. Don't try to fool me. People have to line up to date someone. The woman was clearly not easy to deceive. Hearing the words, line up, Rocky laughed and stared at me, clearly mocking me. All right, you little shit, don't regret it. I gave him a fake smile, sat down, and dialed Alice's number. Haley, darling, I'm sorry, you were so adamant the other day. No need to apologize, I'm serious. Come to Total right now and bring your brother. What? My brother? Alice sounded incredulous. My brother is only 18, just turned legal a few months ago. Are you out of your mind? When did you start having thoughts about my brother? I'll tell you, not happening. 2,000. Hurry up. All right, I'll be there right away. Rocky, you're so cocky. I'll use your money to pick up men. Just wait. Alice must have dressed up her brother specially. He looked great with his fair skin and trendy style. I don't know what Alice promised Jack, but when he saw me, he smiled sweetly and said, hello, sister. I glanced at Rocky, whose face had turned dark, and smiled cheerfully, even playfully pulling Jack's hand and dragging him to sit beside me. I just ordered you some wine, low in alcohol but tasty. Try it. But sister, I don't know how to drink. Jack blinked at me with his innocent eyes. I lied like an old witch. It's okay. If you get drunk, I'll take you home, or even to my place if needed. Jack obediently took a big gulp and then dramatically choked on it. I sympathetically patted his back. The sweet and naive woman in the corner couldn't hold it in any longer. Haley, do you really think I'm dead? Oh, if you hadn't spoken, I'd have thought you drank yourself to death, I said sarcastically, pretending to lean on Jack's shoulder while taunting Rocky. Rocky's anger was palpable, and he couldn't hide it. "Let me introduce you. This is my new partner. Isn't he younger and more understanding than you?" Rocky couldn't take it anymore, stood up, and walked out past me. Typical dog man, always like this. Calm my ass. If you're calm, your wife will be gone. Don't you know how to kiss me? There's nothing a kiss can't solve, unless he's no longer handsome. Rocky seemed to have a sudden epiphany, turned around, and grabbed my wrist, pulling me outside. He dragged me stumbling, and after a few steps, he even took off his coat and draped it over me. Once we reached the underground parking lot and there was no one around, I felt it was time for something intimate to happen. Otherwise, all my effort to dress up beautifully would be in vain. So I stared intently at Rocky's smooth and refined profile. When he noticed, he turned his head. "What are you looking at? Do I fall short compared to that little kid? Such a handsome guy, yet he has such a big mouth." I never expected Rocky to be so angry that night. After he took me home, he never showed up again. Yes, even though we live right across the hall, I didn't see him for a whole week. Late on Saturday night, I couldn't hold it in anymore and had to press my ear against his door to listen for any sounds, trying to figure out if he had left, if he had given up on me. Then something particularly embarrassing happened. "Haley," Rocky's voice, cold with a hint of confusion, came through. My mind went blank, and I quickly got up, tugged at my short skirt, and greeted him. But my fake smile froze when I saw him. To be exact, it was the hot woman next to him. The same hot woman from Total Bar. So he had been MIA for days because he's with her now? Is he disgusted by my chest being smaller than hers, or my butt not as round? I was so mad my eyes turned red, and I pointed at Rocky, cheating bastard. Then I stormed into my own apartment and slammed the door shut. Even as I said this, I still hoped Rocky would realize his mistake. And I couldn't resist peeking through the peephole. To my shock, he actually brought that woman into his place. On a dark, windy night, a lonely man and woman, dry wood and fire. "Rocky, we're done." I was so angry that I tossed and turned all night, unable to sleep, resulting in dark circles under my eyes the next day, making me look like a panda. But the culprit, Rocky, had the nerve to knock on my door. "What's up?" I opened the door a crack and tried to maintain calm. "She's my cousin. She came over yesterday to pick up something," Rocky said, showing me a family photo on his phone. I really wanted to laugh. Why didn't this jerk tell me that yesterday? Probably seeing the doubt in my eyes. Rocky smiled and said something that made me slam the door in his face. "Take some time to think about it. You can't bear to let me go." After closing the door, I opened it again to add a harsh remark. "What a joke. I can juggle 8 men without you." Before I could finish, he covered my mouth, pushed inside, pressed me against the door, and his cool breath came closer until it turned into a kiss. "I've made you feel wronged by being with me." "Indeed. Can you be more wronged?" Rocky's kiss gently fell on my neck, leaving me dazed. "Also, sure." His laughter was like an itching hook, slowly stealing my soul. When I came to my senses, it was already dark, and I was so exhausted I could barely move my fingers. Of course, regret was too late. "I'm hungry." I lightly kicked his calf. Rocky had the audacity to pick me up and ask with a raised eyebrow, "Still hungry? Go to hell, dog man. Your father is starving." I used my last bit of strength to push him away and crawled far off. "Didn't you just fail to recognize who's in charge?" Rocky lifted the blanket and stood up, showing utter shamelessness. Thinking back to how he had forced me earlier, I was so angry my face turned red. I yanked the blanket over my head and ignored him. The rustling sounds of getting dressed stopped, and Rocky came over, pulled off my blanket, and said, "All right, stop hiding. Be careful not to overheat. I'll make you something to eat." I blinked at him, noticing how his gaze was soft and gentle. Turning my face away, I thought, he looks proper when dressed. "I understand. Rocky, you may leave now." Rocky chuckled softly without replying, and soon there was activity in the kitchen. He brought in a bowl of noodles and, playing along, said, "Your humble servant has fulfilled his duty. Does the emperor have any rewards?" Bold servant, daring to ask for a reward. I took the bowl and ate, not wanting to deal with this scoundrel. Later, when he was tormenting me, he said I wasn't a good emperor because I wanted the horse to run but didn't want it to eat grass. I really gave up. He always had a point. Rocky shamelessly lived with me again. Thinking back to that rainy night when we fought, he stormed out and I left without a word. I couldn't help but feel a bit melancholic. Actually, the conflicts between Rocky and me were never resolved. No, actually, this naive sweetheart simply doesn't believe my explanations, nor does he want to hear them. I had a crush for 4 years, was together for 3 years, and ended up wasting a total of 7 years of youth on a foolish first love that ended in marriage. Why do I call him foolish? Because for 3 years, he simply had no interest in me at all. Later, I realized he might not be interested in me, so I broke up with him. he didn't hesitate for a moment to say goodbye. Since our breakup was too amicable, we ended up lurking in each other's social circles. Everyone said he was naturally cold, but when I saw his wedding post, I was genuinely stunned. By the time I woke up to the reality, my cheeks were already cold. In fact, I really don't like him anymore. Those physiological tears were probably for my failed first love, the 7 years of a pipe dream. But Rockey, oh, Rockey, after our arguments, he would Cold War for a week. So, on a stormy night, I finally exploded at him, and we broke up. Forget it. When it comes to security, if Rockey wants as much as he wants, I'll give it to him. Wah, I can't afford to lose a man who fits my heart's desires except for just talking. Yet fate doesn't always cooperate. A new intern joined our company, Tony's wife, named Serena. Fate is so. The scariest part is, this woman is also a sweet and naive type. Personally, I don't want to clash with her. But as the department head, she really shouldn't blame me for scolding her all the time. After scolding her to tears for the 3rd time in a week, I was numb, marked her internship with a big cross. She couldn't stay. Rockey, usually so busy, happened to get off work earlier than me and came to pick me up to take me out for a nice meal. And of course, we ran into Tony, who was there to pick up Serena. This sweet and naive woman greeted me with a pitiful and aggrieved look. Goodbye, director. She's your director? Tony glanced at me and raised an eyebrow. Seeing his look, I knew Serena must have frequently told Tony how I scolded her during the day. I was afraid he'd imagine a dramatic story of unrequited love, so I turned to leave with Rockey. But Rockey, with an extremely possessive attitude, wrapped his arm around my waist and provocatively said to Tony, "What's up?" Tony smiled and patted Serena on the head. "Nothing. She's just a bit clueless and has caused a lot of trouble for Director Haley. Another day, we'll have a meal together to show our appreciation." His words were flawless. I, of course, forced a smile and declined, No, it's nothing. When Tony's car disappeared, Rocky's face turned completely cold. This meant Tony, with a clear understanding of his own wife's foolishness, wasn't intentionally making things difficult for Serena because of me. Rockey, on the other hand, suspecting I might be making things difficult for Serena out of unrequited love, was merely questioning my character. Of course, thinking about why we argued in the first place, I patiently tried to comfort him. "What's wrong? Let's go eat first, okay?" Perhaps my gentleness just looked like guilt to Rockey. I should have gotten angry and called him foolish and brainless. Then he would think I was fine. Ha! His cold laugh conveyed all his sarcasm. I took a deep breath and calmly said, "Rockey, don't take advantage of me. I've explained to you about him 1,000 times already, and I've never brought up old issues with you, have I? Look, I haven't even asked if you have ex-girlfriends." "You did ask." Rockey stopped and stood in the silent underground parking lot, quietly looking at me. I was puzzled, saying, not quite understanding his train of thought. "No," Rockey pressed my shoulders, pushing me against the car. "Only you." I admit my DNA was stirred. He looked so handsome saying, "Only you. If we broke up, I'd never forget you." Rockey lowered his lashes. The remaining words he didn't say, but I understood. So why have I already forgotten Tony after breaking up with him? How many sevens does a lifetime have? I shouldn't think that a few words would earn Rockey's trust. This is the special anxiety and possessiveness in love. I wish from birth to death you would be the only one. I lifted my hand and hooked Rockey's neck, giving him a tender kiss as if there was no one else around. "Listen, is my heart beating for you?" I fluttered my eyes and looked at him emotionally. Rockey's expression didn't change, but his ears turned red. But Rockey's trust in me wasn't just because of my sweet words. It was also thanks to Tony and Serena, those two fools. Tony's family has a bit of money. Despite my big cross mark on Serena, she still stayed in our company, in my department. Her constant mistakes and her attitude of just apologizing but never correcting her errors made me come home with a scowl every day. Rockey asked me many times, but I just shook my head. I didn't want to bring work frustrations into my personal life. These issues shouldn't be shared with him. He didn't push further, giving me space. There was an important project in Hangzhou, and the higher-ups insisted I take Serena with me for experience. I felt like the sky was falling. My refusal didn't succeed, so I had to take her on the business trip, pinching my nose. The adult world is always full of compromises and helplessness. As expected, Serena made a huge mistake in the report she submitted, so I had to correct it and asked her to print the revised version for the next day. What's absurd? Serena printed the original version. When I found out the mistake at the conference room door, I felt like I could kill her. At that moment, I really wanted to cry. I couldn't understand how such people exist in this world, and why I had to deal with one. How do you guard against a fool who constantly makes mistakes? I had to postpone the meeting and leave the team to handle communication, to prevent Serena from making further errors. I took her room card and went to the hotel myself to use her computer to print the correct version. Who knew, after working all night to correct her report, Serena called her husband Tony to Hangzhou for a vacation and to sleep with her. When I opened the door, Tony was just coming out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel. I was so angry it was almost funny. Some people can be so irresponsible and carefree about life. Suddenly, I realized I must have been out of my mind to have liked him for those 7 years. Tony was the last straw. His face turned cold as he narrowed his eyes and said, "Get out." Does he really think I have feelings for him? What a typical mediocre man. Isn't Rockey taller, better looking, and more capable than him? You'd better not interfere with me, I said with a cold face, pointing at him as I walked into the room. Serena is truly an idiot. Tony is here, and she didn't think to come with me when we needed the room card? Is she afraid I'm too scared to speak? Or why doesn't she take her work seriously? Get out, don't make me take action. Tony didn't move, but blocked my way. I threw the room card at him. Save it for yourself, you blind mediocre man. Your wife caused me huge trouble, and now you're trying to boss me around? Why don't you go die? Get lost. Tony was probably stunned by my scolding and didn't react. I marched into the room to find the computer. It had a password. I was so angry it was almost funny. The password for your wife's computer, I said without turning around, not wanting to see him. Tony was silent for a moment. I've never asked. I nodded, speechless, and called Serena, not knowing if she was dead or just dazed. I called 3 times, and she didn't answer. Just as I was about to give up, Serena finally returned my call. For the first time, I felt she was somewhat normal, and I had a strange sense of relief, almost like tears of joy. If I continued dealing with her, I'd definitely go mad. Once this is over, no matter what, I'm resigning. The password. I didn't want to waste another word on her. Serena whispered the password pitifully. I accessed the computer, found the corrected report, carefully checked and printed it, then left. The project barely succeeded in the end, but was downgraded by 1 percentage point because of this incident. I took Serena back without saying a word to her. The company docked half of my salary. Serena faced no consequences. I couldn't help but feel the injustice. I had invested so much time and effort to climb to the director position. In the end, I was pushed out by a mere intern. How ridiculous. But in a company like this, it's better to leave. I never encountered such issues before, which revealed how foolish the company leaders were. When I got home, the house was still dark. I couldn't help but sit on the floor, hugging my knees and crying. I don't know how long I cried, but then the door opened and I looked up at Rockey. That one glance revealed all my grievances. His face went pale instantly. He rushed to me in a few quick steps and held me tight. "Haley?" I couldn't hold back any longer and clung to his neck, crying loudly. He didn't ask anything, just gently patted my back and comforted me. When I finally stopped crying, Rockey helped me to my feet. "Are you hungry?" My eyes were swollen and probably looked terrible. I nodded while avoiding his gaze. "You're still beautiful." Rockey immediately saw through my thoughts and gently smiled as he cupped my face. Then he led me into the kitchen. I helped him cook, and for the first time, I found doing housework enjoyable. Rockey prepared 3 dishes and a soup. We sat down to eat, and I slowly recounted my experience to him. By then, I was calm. But perhaps because I was facing Rockey, my tears started flowing again, dripping into my bowl. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" Rockey rubbed my head. His voice remained gentle, but his expression was already quite serious. He looked truly offended. I sniffled. "I'm Haley, the director. It's really embarrassing to have my mentality shattered by a rookie, you know? Well, now I'm just an unemployed person." Rockey pinched my nose and laughed. "You're always so tough with me." Am I tough with her? If hitting people weren't illegal, I would have beaten those fools already. Just thinking about them made my voice turn harsh. "Yeah, you're tough with everyone." Rockey kissed the corner of my mouth. Even though he said nothing, just that kiss made all my grievances seem insignificant. But who would have thought that Rockey was not only taller, better looking, and more capable than that fool, but also richer? My not-so-small company was directly acquired by President Rockey. He fired Serena, clearly stating the reasons and providing related evidence, permanently tainting her resume with that of a foolish intern. He also dealt with Tony's company, causing them to lose half a year's worth of profits. When I heard this, my jaw almost dropped. "Your Majesty, why didn't you tell me before that you're so wealthy?" I said with a flattering tone, hugging Rockey's neck. He tilted my chin and smiled. "My dear concubine never asked. You should be more aware. So, what if you know now?" I gave him a sly smile. Holding hands is $10, kisses are $100, and sleeping together is $500. Then he threw me over his shoulder and carried me away. In front of me, he did a few spins. I was so scared I grabbed the edge of the bed, trying to escape, but I was pulled back. Then I can sleep with my dear concubine for a lifetime. Sounds great, Rockey whispered in my ear, his flirtatious breath tickling me and feeling oddly sweet. I was invited back to continue being a director and part-time boss's future wife. Rockey visited the company for an inspection once. I secretly took off my shoes and rubbed against his calf. The marketing department's deputy director, Cora, saw me. This flashy and vile woman had never gotten along with me. She had been very sarcastic when I resigned. Today, she mocked me even more. Director Haley, have you looked in the mirror? How old are you to still try to seduce our new president Rockey? Oh, indeed. Some people resign and still dare to come back. What are they even capable of? I gave her a narrowed-eye smile. How do you know our president Rockey doesn't fall for this kind of stuff? Shameless. Anyway, Cora and I often bickered, so I didn't take it to heart. Who knew this big-chested, brainless woman would actually take my words to heart? Rockey, coming to the company under the guise of an inspection, intended to sneak a kiss with me but was intercepted by Cora. When I walked in, I saw Cora and Rockey sitting on the sofa, talking about work. I didn't expect to knock before entering Rockey's office, so I saw Cora taking off her shoes and rubbing them against Rockey's calf. Although it was just a brief contact, it was already sullied. Rockey's face darkened as he stood up, trying to explain. I smiled gently. You two continue. Haley. Rockey's voice was deep and cold. I tried to hold back and not argue with him here. Was he really going to blame me first? This was too much to bear. Rockey, you dare to speak to me like that? I turned around and glared at him fiercely, warning him with my eyes that he wouldn't be getting any tonight. Who would have thought he wouldn't be intimidated at all? He came over quickly, grabbing my wrist. What are you doing? Are you just going to watch your husband being mistreated by someone else? Still going on? Since when did you become so generous? Are you tired of me? Oh, I knew he was a fool. The series of questions confused both me and Cora. You, get out, and don't embarrass yourself here, I said to the stunned Cora, using my eyes to urge her to leave. After all, family matters should not be aired publicly, and I didn't want others to know Rockey occasionally had a lapse in judgment. I wasn't really that angry because, despite her annoying ways, Cora wasn't inherently bad. She would likely avoid Rockey in the future. Once the door was closed, I patted Rockey's face. Do you have no sense of shame? Acting so suspicious and aggrieved? Clearly, he suddenly cared about his dignity. He sneered, Am I aggrieved? I shook my head repeatedly. You're not. Just work inside and assert your dominance. Don't let any troublemakers come around. Rockey pinched my waist hard and let me go, returning to his desk to work. A serious man is truly handsome. Sure, here is the translation. Indeed, news of my relationship with Rockey spread quickly. Everyone began jokingly calling me boss lady. I was delighted for a couple of days, but then I suddenly realized that Rockey and I weren't married. What should I do if I suddenly feel the urge to get married? I could only secretly ask on Jihu. What a bunch of nonsense answers. They all said that if a man doesn't want to marry you, he's just playing with you. Rockey, playing with me? I'm the one playing with him. Although I didn't admit it out loud, I felt increasingly distressed inside. I'm already 29, and most of my friends and classmates are married. Why does Rockey only want to date me? I couldn't help but find him more and more annoying, frequently picking fights. And he reached out and touched my abdomen. Period. Get lost. Don't you know? Rockey lowered his eyes and calculated the days. His long lashes fluttered. Pregnant? Why are you trembling? Excited. I pinched his face. No. Forget it. Let things flow naturally. It's fine this way. Rockey loves me, and even a fool can see that. After adjusting my mindset, good things started happening. On the day of the first snow, I was dressed lightly. I went downstairs, shivering, planning to cross the road to the parking lot. When I saw Rockey standing in the snow, he was in a gray long coat, holding a black umbrella, standing in the night under the falling snow. Everything around him became his background. A person's life will experience countless heartbeats, but since meeting Rockey, all my heartbeats have been because of him. I laughed and ran into his arms, and he caught me with ease. Slow down. Once in the car, Rockey thoughtfully handed me a cup of hot water. As we drove, I noticed the route was wrong. Where are we going? First snow, I'm taking you out to eat. When Rockey said this, he tightened his grip on the steering wheel unconsciously. Oh boy, he was hiding something from me. When he led me into the rooftop garden restaurant of the Four Seasons Hotel in New York, My heart started racing. The interior was bathed in warm, romantic light, with soft, soothing Wedding in a Dream playing, and vibrant, romantic red roses. After Rocky pulled out my chair, he walked over to the piano, playing an unknown piece. Every note struck a chord in my heart, and I couldn't help but shed tears. I was about to secretly wipe them away, when Rocky approached me with a diamond ring, gently using his fingertip to wipe away the tears from my eye. "Haley, I want you to marry me." "He doesn't even kneel," I pouted, teasing him. And it wasn't even a question. So arrogant. The response was his tender smile. "You promise me? I'll kneel for you forever." Was he threatening me? All right then. I lifted my chin proudly and looked at him. Rocky took out the ring, smiling as he knelt down to put it on my finger, and placed a soft kiss on my ring finger. Later, Rocky pressed my hand into the pillow, his voice low and seductive. "Why do you seem unwilling?" "Not at all. Who's threatening me?" I was so thoroughly captivated by him that I didn't dare to be disobedient. He leaned in and bit my earlobe. "It's not a threat, it's a plea. Dear Miss Haley, Mr. Rocky pleads with you to love him and marry him." He said all the sweet things, and how come I never knew he could be so charming? I wrapped my arms around his neck and smiled. "Okay, Miss Haley agrees." But what was that piece of music? Composed it myself. It's called a Haley. So the gentle and loving piece was called Haley. It's even better than Chopin. The end. If you like Puppy's story, please follow and like it. Updated every morning at 9 a.m.